G'day guys, welcome to the Elevate Church online experience and welcome to week 3 of the Habit series. It's so good to be here. If you haven't been here before, welcome, and if you have, welcome back. If you at home are enjoying our online experience so far, feel free to give us a like, a subscribe, or share us with your mates on Facebook or YouTube. Today's awesome tunes are coming from 2 churches, one in the United Kingdom, Today's Community Church, and one in Melbourne, Gateway Church.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Men's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. Your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing is better than best and better, or another die for me. There is another in the fire. Oh, my dad left for dead beneath the water. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. Should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning? Either way, I won't bow to the things of this world. And I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the water, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding, or power set me free? There is a grave that holds no body. Now that power lives in me. There is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. You're there with me, Lord. Oh, and I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness falls away. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between us thin. I can feel the ground shaking beneath us as the prison walls creeping. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us.
Today's awesome message is coming from our very own Mark Pomeroy. If you missed out on week 1 and 2, go back and check them out. Enjoy.
Well, hey there to our Elevate Online family from all around the world. Great to have you with us again this week. And a special shout out to those of you who have joined our online family since the beginning of 2021. We've had people join us from Belgium, so welcome. Also Ohio in the US. Great to have you part of our family. And also from Dubai, so definitely reaching and building people all around the world. So it's great to have you with us, great to have you on this journey together. And speaking of journey, this is actually the third week of a series we launched at the beginning of 2021, simply called Habits. And really it plays to the idea that new year, new opportunities. And with this new year, you know, it's quite normal, it's quite standard practice for a lot of people to be setting goals. And those are typically better goals. You know, I don't really know people who start the year setting worse goals. You know, we set better goals. This year I want to have better health, you know, better finances, better relationships, do better in my business or my career, you know, be a better follower of Jesus, do better with my parenting. You know, these better goals. And actually, there's a real place for them. There's something about benchmarking. There's something about putting something on the horizon that can inspire us and can jumpstart us as we enter a new year. Though with this series, Habits, we're highlighting the fact that setting a goal or having a better goal or a better outcome in mind on its own isn't enough. We actually need to marry up the goal with the process. We need to understand the process, and then we need to execute the process. And typically, much of this process has to do with habits. And the reality is, and we've been saying this every single week, is that you and I already have habits. So we're not asking the question, do you have habits, in this series? The question we're asking is are the habits you currently have causing you to become the person God's ultimately created you to become? And are the habits you already have moving you in the direction of what God's called you to do? In fact, I like how Paul put it. Now, Paul was one of the heavyweights, one of the entrepreneurs of the early church. And he wrote this to the church in Corinth. It's just a very simple visual that actually we can better understand maybe today, thanks to modern television. But he wrote this to that church. He said, you've all been to the stadium, or in our case, maybe watched on television, and seen the athletes race. Now, everyone runs, yet only one wins. So run to win. And I want to encourage you as we're launching into this new year, run to win. Don't just do laps. Don't just do another lap just like you did last year and the year before. Don't just do the bare minimum. Don't just set the pace alongside people who aren't actually really making progress. But instead, run to win. Set up the sorts of habits, the sorts of training, execute the process that will cause you to run to win. Now, a little recap of the series so far, particularly those of you joining us for the first time, but it's a refresher for the rest of us. In week 1, we called that message, Who Impacts Do. And we put a few things out there. We said, have an outcome by all means, yet maybe just right-size the outcome goal to like 12 months. Don't think maybe 5 years, because who knows what's going to happen in 5 years, and that just sounds overwhelming. What about just focusing on a better goal in 2021? And don't just make it a what goal, maybe make it a who goal. You know, this year I want to become, and fill in the blank, you know, a more generous person, a better leader, a more disciplined person, you know, something that you want to become. And then week 2, last week, we talked about starting and sticking, because starting new habits, well, I'm not saying they're always easy, but they're certainly easier than sticking with them. And so we broke down what it kind of looks like to both start a habit and to stick with that habit. And I guess one of the big ideas was choosing a keystone goal. That was the phrase we used, a keystone goal this year. Just one, I want to have just one keystone or keystone habit. One new or one resumed keystone, not 5. If you choose 5, you'll fail on all of them for the most part. Choose one new keystone habit that's going to move you in the direction of your better goal. And we highlighted the point that in just developing one new keystone habit, that actually, and just focusing on that actually will likely ripple out into other arenas of your life as well, without you even focusing on them. So in this third and final installment of our Habits series, this week I want to talk about stopping and breaking. You know, last week was about establishing and sticking with good habits. Today I want to focus on maybe some things that we need to consider stopping. And not just stopping once, not just stopping for 1 month, not just stopping for 2021, but actually breaking them. So we're less likely to pick them up again into the future. And I want to revisit from last week something we called the habits loop. Now this isn't our idea, it's not my idea. This is reasonably universal from the experts in this field of habits. And they called it the habits loop. The habits loop is essentially three separate pieces, that there is a trigger, there's something, somebody, something that causes you to want to respond or take action in a particular way. And in taking that action, you experience some reward that will cause you to be more likely to do the same thing when that trigger occurs again. And this habits loop cuts both ways. It works when it comes to starting new good habits. It also works when it comes to breaking habits. And we've drawn a lot of the comparisons about the same underlying principles work for good habits as well as working for bad habits. Though I want to highlight one exception. There's one key exception that's actually hidden in plain sight that is different when it comes to good habits versus bad habits. In fact, not only different, it actually helps to explain why, for many of us, sticking with bad habits is often easier than sticking with good habits, even though the good habits are better. That we instinctively, in many cases, find it easier to stick with bad habits than to stick with good habits. And here's the way I'll explain it, this difference. Think about it this way. When it comes to bad habits, the reward, remember this habits loop, the reward is often up front. It's often short term. It's often rather instant. And the destructive aspect doesn't occur till much later on in the future. And so we've got this instant reward, this instant feedback, this instant gratification that causes us to want to keep going. And the punishment, the destructive outcome of that bad habit, we don't experience till later on. So we can kind of lose sight of that until often it's too late and we're in the doctor's office, or we're in the bank pleading for some extension on our financial circumstances. Conversely, good habits, when it comes to good habits, the cost is often upfront and the reward is often down the line. I mean, let me use a reasonably classic example. Let's say this year you've set a WHO goal that you want to become a healthier, fitter person. And so your what goal is that you're going to work out regularly. Now, I won't put a number on that, but let's say it's 5 days a week. 5 days a week, you've decided you're going to work out, and you choose running because you think to yourself, well, I don't need to join a gym. All I need is a pair of shoes, t-shirt, shorts, and I'm good. So you choose running, but you haven't run in a long time and certainly haven't run in recent history. So day one, you set out the door and you start, and 100 meters in, it is torturous. You're short of breath, your legs hurt, everything in you's screaming at you, why in the world are you doing this? You're going past other people who look better maybe than you think you look. You maybe, push through, and you get home from that run and you're uncomfortable, you're sweaty. For the rest of the day, you're tired. The next day you wake up and your legs are sore. Walking up and down stairs is a chore. Ow, 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 ow. And you think to yourself, why am I doing this? See, the cost is up front. However, if you consistently stick with this, start and stick with this new action over a period of time, eventually you will start to feel less pain as you're going. You'll start to feel better. Your body will start to respond. It's the natural way our body responds to preserving homeostasis. And the reward will come eventually, but not instantly. And this largely explains the difference of why we find bad habits are easier to stick with than good habits. So let me talk about bad habits and how we can break the habits loop when it comes to bad habits. And really, just like last week, we talked about one of the main keys to sticking with good habits being the trigger. And we said, make the trigger easy and obvious. Make it easy and obvious. Well, the trigger also matters a lot when it comes to bad habits. But rather than making the trigger easy and obvious, we, when it comes to breaking bad habits, need to make the trigger difficult. We need to make it hard to access. We need to make it somewhere beyond arm's length. And in doing this, we can add willpower, because willpower matters, but willpower on its own will only get you so far. We can take willpower and add to that making the trigger difficult. And in that 1-2 combination punch, it will be easier to break the habit loop when it comes to bad habits. I like the way King Solomon wrote this, some of the ancient wisdom from the writings of King Solomon many, many centuries ago. He wrote, "Don't take wicked bypass. Don't so much as set foot on that road. Stay clear of it. Give it a wide berth. Make a detour and be on your way." See, the key that Solomon's highlighting, and the idea of making the trigger more difficult, is don't try to flirt with how close you can get to the bad habit without giving in, as if it's some sort of test of willpower. No, actually stay well and truly away from it. Make accessing the trigger difficult. So, here's 5 major triggers. These are what the experts kind of talk about, and I think you'll relate and certainly appreciate many, if not most, if not all of them. And they talk about 5 major triggers that make us more likely to then act in a destructive way, to repeat a bad habit. The first is place, the second is time, the third is mood, the fourth is moment, and the fifth is people. So let me just break them down for you as we conclude this series on habits. Place, let me start with place. Let me talk about place and time, because they kind of overlap. You probably, if the bad habit you want to break this year is a pornography addiction, I'm guessing that you don't sit around your family dinner table when your family is having dinner with your device open, watching pornography. I suspect that's not what you do. I suspect you're more likely to indulge in watching pornography when you're on your own, when you're alone in a place where there's nobody else around you. Because there, it's easy, and that's the problem. And so you've got to reverse easy and instead make it difficult. So I could tell you to never be on your own, but that's kind of impractical in many respects. And I can't take too deep a dive into this. I mean, the information is out there. But based on this big idea of making the trigger difficult, here's an example. You can actually install software onto your devices that blocks access to most adult sites or adult content. And yes, I know there's workarounds, and I know the porn industry is certainly not taking this fight laying down. They're trying to work around these blocks. Well, here's another one you can do, is you can actually share your device in terms of what you view, your browsing history. You can actually set it up to be shared with someone else. Now, that, again, I can't tell you who that might be, but if you've got a close friend who you trust, you might want to say to them, "Hey, listen, confidentially, I'm struggling with pornography, and this year I want to break that habit. Will you help me?" And all I want you to do is, I can set up on my device the settings that allow you to see my browsing history. And so, whilst it's not going to automatically stop me, it's going to make me less likely to browse the sort of sites that I've been browsing. And what's more is if and when I give in, if and when I capitulate on one instance or whatever, you'll be able to see that, and I want you to come and challenge me about that. Now, this is one example. I mean, I picked pornography. Look, there's plenty of other examples, maybe a little less uncomfortable for some of you. But I'm just saying that the place and the time matter in a lot of cases, and yet there's a way to make the trigger more difficult in those places and those times. Here's another one, and this one is mood. That there's certain moods that when you're in that mood or when you're feeling that mood, that will more likely trigger a certain destructive action. And the experts use a very clever acronym when it comes to what we need to identify when it comes to moods. And they use the acronym HALT, which is a clue as to what you should do. That there's 4 moods that they talk about. That in these moods, or when we experience these moods, we will be more likely to respond with a bad habit. The first one is hungry. When you're hungry, you're more likely to reach for the first thing, the most convenient thing, drive to the most convenient place, order from the most convenient place, and not necessarily the best food or the best place. So understand what's your typical response, your habit loop, when you're triggered by hunger. A is angry. When you're angry at somebody or something, what's your current default response to that trigger? And that's what you need to break. It's not so that you'll never get angry again, it's understand what your current action is. And the need to break that, to train yourself to do something different. L is lonely, and you might put bored in this category. That when I'm lonely, and fill in the blank. Drink, smoke, binge watch 24 hours of Netflix, whatever it is. And finally, T is tired. Tired is a bad time to make important decisions. Tired is where your defenses are down. And here's the thing about these 4 HALTs, hunger, anger, loneliness, tired, is when you're in these spaces, when you're feeling these things, when this is your mood, put yourself on high alert. And that'll help you break the habit loop. Moment. This is one of those, when this situation happens, when I'm in this scenario, then I was speaking last year with a friend of mine who's a recovering alcoholic, and I was, just asking how they were going. And one of the questions I asked them is, I asked them what I thought was a bit of an obvious question. I said, do you still feel like having a drink from time to time? And the answer was yeah. They said yes, they do. They do absolutely feel like having a drink from time to time. And actually, they feel like having a drink when the same kind of things happen that used to happen. When their trigger was a moment, stress, hard day at work, confrontation with somebody, that previously the action would be have a drink, get a drink. Well, not one drink, have a lot of drinks. And what they've trained themselves to do, though they haven't been able to escape those moments. I mean, they still get stressed. They still have a hard day at work. They still interact with some crotchety people. But they've trained themselves as the action that they do is go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in that moment. Literally get in the car and find the meeting that's happening then and go to that meeting. And by just doing that, they've broken the habit loop. And finally, and maybe I saved this one for last because it's kind of the most obvious one, I think in many cases, is people. That the people we surround ourselves with, the people we spend the most quality time with, the people who are in our inner circle have an enormous impact, can be an enormous trigger to our action. In fact, oftentimes we will find ourselves doing what they do in the exact same trigger situation. Well, here's a couple of warnings, some wisdom from Solomon and some wisdom from Paul, who have both thrown a bit of stuff out there already today. Solomon said, walk with the wise and become wise. Great. For a companion of fools suffers harm. And then Paul wrote it very simply, the same church in Corinth, bad company ruins good manners. Bad company ruins good habits. Bad company will lead you in a habit loop that will have an outcome that's not a better outcome. Because it's almost impossible to have a great life with the wrong friends. So here in 2021, be intentional about who you spend your time with. Be intentional. Hang around wise people and become wise. Hang around people who are making good choices, who have developed good habits, and you are more likely to lock in and jump in their slipstream and develop also some of those same good habits. So that's it. 3 weeks of a series we called Habits. It's by no means an exhaustive series, but I really hope that we've hit the high notes. And I really hope, if you missed any of the weeks, go back and watch them, week 1, week 2, because this is really a package deal that we've put together. And it's designed to help you, to set you up for success in 2021, which is our prayer. Our prayer is that 2021, you'll be better and you'll experience better. And you'll come out the end of this year more like Jesus than when you started. So continue this journey with us. Be sure to invite other people along as well. And we'll see you back here next week for our Elevate Church online experience.
If you'd like to partner up with us and help us reach and build into more people all over the globe, check out the ways to give. They can be found below. Thanks guys at home so much for joining us on week 3 of Habits. Make it a habit and join us next week for another awesome message. Cheers.